Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, can I ask my team to start the recording now? Yes, I see that they have started. So the floor is yours. You may start now. Thank you.
Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to everyone joining us from across the Asia Pacific and beyond. On behalf of UNESCO and Ministry of Communication and Information Technology of Nepal, I warmly welcome you to this session at APrIGF 2025 on inclusive digital policies in Asia Pacific. My name is Nirjana Sharma. I'm the Program Officer and Head of Communication and Information at UNESCO Nepal, and I'll be moderating today's discussion together with my colleague Aruna Joshi, a digital media associate at UNESCO. Before we begin, just a quick note to all the participants. We encourage you to share your questions on comments in the chat box during the discussion and kindly indicate which panelist your question is meant for. We will have a dedicated Q&A segment toward the end where we will take questions from the chat. This discussion comes at a crucial time when countries across the region, including Nepal, are advancing digital transformation while seeking to ensure that such progress remains inclusive, equitable, and rights based. Over the past few years, we have seen remarkable progresses. Governments have expanded broadband access to remote communities, launched digital literacy campaigns, and adopted policies to make public services more efficient and transparent through digital platforms. Initiatives like Nepal's Digital Nepal Framework and similar programs across the Asia Pacific show a strong commitment to harnessing technology for national development and citizen empowerment. At the same time, there are persistent challenges and uneven outcomes. In some cases, expansion has deepened divides between urban and rural areas, or between those with and without digital literacy. Questions of affordability, data privacy, accessibility for persons with disabilities, and gender equality continue to shape the digital inclusion debate. There are also examples where digital governance frameworks have struggled to work to keep pace with rapid technological change, or where well-intended policies have not fully reached those in most need. So we reflect today, it's important that we take balanced look, learning from what's working while also acknowledging what still needs improvement. The aim is not to just celebrate the technology for its own sake, but to ensure that digital transformation truly serves people, enabling participation, protecting rights, and promoting inclusion at every level of society. We will explore how inclusive digital policies can be designed and implemented through collaboration among governments, international organizations, technology providers, and civil society. We will also reflect on Nepal's Digital Nepal framework and how global frameworks such as UNESCO's ROMEX indicators and UNDP's principles for digital transformation can guide countries toward human centered, accountable, and sustainable digital ecosystems. I am pleased to introduce our distinguished panel of speakers, each representing a key pillar of the multi-stakeholder model, the government representative, intergovernmental organizations, representative from private sector, and civil society. We have Adesh Khadka, Joint Secretary and Head of ICT Division at Nepal's Ministry of Communication and Information Technology. With around 20 years of public service, Adesh has been a driving force in shaping Nepal's digital landscape, from leading ICT initiatives at the Election Commission to involving in the designing of country's first of digital frameworks, and now steering Digital Nepal Framework 2.0. His visionary leadership continues to transform governance through innovation and technology. Welcome to the panel, Adesh sir.
Thank you.
We have Sriganesh Lokanathan, a leading voice in digital transformation from the UNDP Asia Pacific Regional Hub. Sriganesh is a digital media specialist with over 2 decades of experience helping institutions throughout the Asia Pacific transition from strategy to successful practice. Before leading UNDP's regional digital efforts, he focused on AI strategy, data governance, and public sector capacity building. Sriganesh co-led global initiatives to expand data and AI access for the SDGs and Pulse Lab. He also helped establish one of Global South's most influential big data and AI for development research programs at Learn Asia. His entire career has been dedicated to making digital transformation work in practice. Welcome to the panel, Sriganesh. I would like to welcome Ashit Adhikari, a team lead for public and corporate affairs at Huawei, Nepal, where he drives strategic communication, stakeholder engagement, and reputation building initiatives. With over a decade of experience in public and corporate affairs, Ashit plays a pivotal role in strengthening Huawei's brand image and fostering partnerships with customers, government agencies, and the media. His leadership has been instrumental in positioning Huawei as a trusted technology partner contributing to Nepal's digital transformation. Ashit is deeply committed to promoting transparency, collaboration, and responsible innovation, bridging the gap between technology and society. Through impactful storytelling and proactive communication, he supports Huawei's long term vision of building a fully connected, intelligent, and sustainable Nepal aligned with global digital inclusion goals championed by organizations like UNESCO. Welcome to the panel, Ashit. Now let's welcome Waqas Hassan, an internet governance expert bridging government and civil society. As the regional lead for Asia at the Global Digital Inclusive Partnership, Waqas drives policy and advocacy to promote gender responsive and inclusive digital policies across the Asia Pacific. Waqas also brings extensive regulatory experience from Pakistan Telecommunication Authority, where he led international coordination and capacity building efforts. A familiar face in global forums such as ITU, ICANN, and ISOC, Waqas is passionate about advancing digital inclusion through collaboration and evidence-based policy. Please welcome my colleague Tatevik Grigoryan, Associate Program Specialist at UNESCO. Tatevik leads UNESCO's work on Internet universality through the Rome X framework, a global initiative that uses hundreds of indicators to assess how well national internet environments reflect principles of rights, openness, accessibility, multi-stakeholder participation, and cross-cutting issues like gender, sustainability, and digital inclusion. Her recent work includes organizing and guiding ROMX assessments in multiple countries, helping national stakeholders gather evidence, develop policy recommendations, and build capacity to improve digital access and internet governance on the ground. Together, our speakers bring valuable perspectives on policy, innovation, governance, and advocacy, the essential ingredients for making digital transformation inclusive and sustainable. Now, let's begin with opening question to each of our panelists. So we will have 4 minutes to each of you for your opening question. So my first question goes to Adesh Khadka, Ministry of Communication and Information Technology. Adesh sir, while Digital Nepal Framework has laid an important foundation for the country's digital transformation, what policy and institutional barriers continue to constrain inclusive digital access, and what specific strategies or reforms is the ministry pursuing to address these challenges? Over to you, and you have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Nirjana ji, again for having me here and having this session along with the UNESCO. It's a pleasure to be here. As you rightly said, the Nepal has introduced the Digital Nepal Framework in 2019 with 1 nation, 8 sectors, and 80 initiatives. Unfortunately, immediately after this policy was declared, we had the COVID and the lockdowns. In a way, it stopped some activities and it pushed some activities, other activities, as we all know, looking at the digital processes that happened post-COVID. Looking back in 4-5 years period of that framework, we found that there were some activities or some areas that was really, good initiatives were there, just like national ID, and digital payments. But there were other activities within the health and other sector which lacked. So looking at the policy hurdles and this institutional governance hurdle, again, just to be very brief on this, there were some this fiscal policy and taxation policy that created impact on the affordability, and it still does. Looking at the telecom and spectrum all around the world, we have been getting more accessible and more affordable internet, but still right now it's more focused on the urban and those areas, and because of the geography of our country, there are a lot of areas where we haven't been able to give the good services from the telecom and internet access. And then institutional side, again, on the perspective of Nepal, we have just introduced the federal government from the unitary government. So we had a lot of hassles, administrative hassles that happened within the last 4 years, where we were some kind of a very preliminary setup were being done to the province and local government, where the most of the services were to be delivered. So it has created some kind of issues to the service taker. And as with any developing nation and low-income nation, we have a difficult time with the digital literacy, difficulties focusing on the infrastructure, especially on the logistics side, last mile, connectivity to the rural area, and again, like old traditional problem of local languages, where a lot of service takers would prefer to be, if they can have the services in their local language, in their local dialect, but the official languages are limited, and it has created a problem. And finally, just to touch base on the gender and age-based division, again, the digital part, we always have this, more excavation of gender-based divide and age-based division, where older people are having difficulty getting the services, and with These touch bases, I would like to conclude on the first part. Like to respond later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adesh sir. Now, considering the constraint that you have mentioned, I would like to go to Sriganesh. So, from UNDP's perspective, how can UNDP principles for digital development be adapted to local political and institutional contexts in South Asia or Asia Pacific to ensure inclusivity and accountability? Over to you, Sriganesh.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for inviting me to this session as well. I don't want to sort of repeat what this, I think you can sort of find out what the UNDP principles for digital development are on the web, right? But they are powerful precisely because they're not meant to be static and sort of as a universal checklist. The real value of them comes when countries interpret them, adapt them to their own sort of political and institutional realities. And that context is very key for when we start to think about what does inclusion and equity mean. In South Asia, the adaptation process, I think, first needs to start with acknowledging context, right? And the context that we are seeing in the region is about fragmented institutions, policy systems being evolving continuously, and various levels of digital maturity. Asia Pacific is vast with a wide variety of maturity levels there, and we need to acknowledge that sort of local context. And if digital transformation is meant to be inclusive and accountable, these principles have to move from mere documents to daily practice, right? How do we embed them into the way that we do things on a daily basis? So just to give you sort of an example, like when you sort of take one of those principles, which is like design with the user, right? That can only be meaningful if we have governments that have the capability to not just on the technical side, but who are able to sort of map how citizens actually experience their services. And this is where, for example, service design blueprints become essential. They allow government officials to understand the full user journey that is experienced rather than what they think it should be, right? So you get to have a sense of where systems fail, where exclusion is actually happening, and where the policy intent doesn't actually translate into experience for citizens, right? Similarly, when you sort of talk about building for sustainability, they must be interpreted in the political systems where we have leadership changes quite frequently in the region, right? So we need to invest not just in the technical platforms, but in institutional memory, right? Digital units, local talents, and governance models that survive the political turnover. And to be truly collaborative, we need to move away. I think this is sort of my final point here, is that we can't have ad hoc consultation. We need to have genuine multi-stakeholder design process in how these services are developed, delivered to an experience, right? So this is where civil society, the private sector, and academia have a seat at the table before the actual systems are built, not after they fail. So treating these principles as roles, we need to view them as some form of adaptive scaffolds, right? Tools that help governments learn by doing, iterate responsibly, and build legitimacy through openness and accountability. And in saying that, I think those two words are, those two particular things I feel are very key here. Learn by doing and iterate responsibly. We don't have the luxury of saying that we will develop capacity and then all these services will be designed and developed, right? Some of this has to happen through learn by doing. And how do we develop processes that enable to do that is something that I think is a very important question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sriganesh. That was very insightful with some local context as well. So also relating to this, I would like to now come to Ashit Adhikari from Huawei on what have been Huawei's most effective models for public-private partnership that promote digital inclusion transparently and equitably.
Hi, thank you, Nirjana. So I think at Huawei, we see this public-private partnership as a shared responsibility journey, shared development journeys. So like in Nepal, and across the region. Our most effective models are those that have been built on co-creation with the government and local partners, where the focus goes beyond, goes beyond connectivity to include capacity building and long-term empowerments. So, we believe that this connectivity is not just a privilege; it's a fundamental right. So, over the past 2 decades, we have partnered with governments, operators, and development organizations across the Asia Pacific region to bring reliable connectivity to even the most remote corner of the world. And in Nepal, for instance, Huawei's technologies supports millions of mobile users through our long-term collaboration with telecom operators, helping ensure that the communication remains resilient even during the crisis, like the earthquake that we had, the recent flood that we faced, and other natural disasters. And beyond connectivity, also the digital inclusion means ensuring that people have the skills, access, and opportunity to participate in the digital economy. So that's why, like Huawei here in Nepal, also we invest heavily in capacity building and education program, such as Seeds for the Future, the ICT Academy, and Smart Classroom initiatives that have empowered thousands of young people in Nepal and across the region to learn about AI, cloud computing, and sustainable energy solutions. So these are, not just a CSR project. These are the long-term commitments to building talent ecosystem that strengthen the nation from within. So in the rural areas, we've worked to deploy cost-efficient network solutions, expanding across the remote communities that were previously off-grids. So, what makes these partnership equitable is transparency, aligning technology deployment with national digital strategies, and ensuring that infrastructure development, policies, and skills move together. And I think that's how inclusion becomes sustainable. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ashit. Now, I would like to come to Waqas. We have already got some perspective from the government, from intergovernmental and private sector. So, Waqas, according to you, what are the most persistent forms of digital exclusion in the region that governments and corporations still tend to overlook?
Thank you, Nirjana. I think what I'm pleased to hear from the perspective from government and from multilateral organizations and from the private sector is the fact that the persistent form of digital exclusion I wanted to talk about is something that everybody now realizes. This is something that we at Global Digital Inclusion Partnership have also been advocating, and we term it as meaningful connectivity. Uh, I think for far too long, the governments and some other stakeholders have been just zoned in on improve on providing connectivity. How much area has been covered, how much percentage of the population has been covered. Uh, but in that particular quest for connectivity, probably it was forgotten that you can't just go to a village and hand out a car to a villager and expect him to know how to drive, how to learn all of the rules. Does he have the money to afford petrol? Uh, you know, so it's so good to see that now all of the stakeholders are sort of understanding what connectivity actually brings. It doesn't bring inclusion for everybody. It actually brings exclusion for a lot of those people that you take connectivity to that particular part of the world or the community. Uh, and actually, we have a very classic example of failing universal service funds in our region and beyond, because that's just connectivity, and just connectivity has simply not worked. Even if you put in money into that one, there are actually case studies and empirical evidence that giving out free devices actually doesn't work. It doesn't mean that people start using it. So I think the in terms of what we advocate as an organization, and I think what overall there is a collective realization within all of the stakeholders is the fact that uh, we need to bring meaningful connectivity to people. Uh, Saying that 90% of our population is covered by mobile broadband signal is actually way more lucrative than saying, okay, 35% of our people are actually using the internet meaningfully or connectivity or getting empowered by. So I think we should, and of course, I mean, I see that a lot of stakeholders, governments, the private and other stakeholders have now started to realize this, and started talking about meaningful connectivity. So I'm pretty confident that this persistent form of digital exclusion, which was actually a mindset, has started to sort of come down a bit. So I'll stop here and we'll talk more about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Waqas. Now, coming to my colleague Tatevik from UNESCO. So, Tatevik, we heard a lot about meaningful engagement, meaningful intervention from your fellow speakers. So, can you give us like some perspective? Because UNESCO has in the region, in the Asia Pacific, done in several countries. It has conducted the ROMX assessment. And from UNESCO perspective, what have been the key enablers or barriers in translating those assessment findings into concrete national digital policies and reforms?
Thank you very much, Nirjana, and thank you to our colleagues and panelists. And actually, I'm very happy to hear that many of the thoughts which I was going also to express, it's a very good sign that we're thinking towards the same direction. You're right, Nirjana, you led the assessment in that part of the ROMX assessment, and we've supported about 13 countries in Asia and the Pacific to conduct these assessments, which do not mean to do ranking or comparison, but merely to help the governments and the local stakeholders to gather data and evidence to help inform their national digital policies and strategies. So I think I would like to highlight just very few points which we've seen are very important in translating these recommendations that we have into policies. First of all, political commitment has proven to be really, really important. While we really prioritize, encourage, and facilitate multi-stakeholder collaboration, I must say that political commitment has been really important. As in the end, the recommendations would be incorporated into the national digital agenda. Colleagues spoke a lot about multi-stakeholder engagement, which is one of the key principles for these assessments that UNESCO is supporting. We've in all the countries that we've supported the assessment, we have supported the establishment of multi-stakeholder advisory boards, which consist of civil society, across government, private sector, academia, regulators, national statistics offices. And the process itself has been so valuable as the findings of the assessments. As in many countries in Asia and the Pacific, we've seen that it was the first time that these stakeholders gathered around the same table to have their voices heard and to participate in the discussion on the internet governance and inclusive digital policies based on the principles of rights, openness, accessibility, and multi-stakeholder participation that you mentioned in your opening. So political commitment, multi-stakeholder engagement, evidence-based reporting has also been key. So the work here with national statistics offices have also been key. Although in many countries we've seen gaps in the availability of data, and especially in availability of disaggregated data. So I think the engagement of national statistics offices in collecting and providing data has helped, especially the governments in informing their digital policies based on first-hand evidence and data. So I think in many countries where we've seen these gaps, then we turn the gaps into recommendations and incorporating the indicators like ROMX indicators and others that other partner institutions have also helped a lot in the process to facilitate the evidence-based policy making. And what has been really crucial is capacity and resources, and the commitment of the stakeholders to really allocate the necessary resources to build the capacity of the concerned stakeholders, then to translate these recommendations into the policy in the first place. And then it's one thing also, it's been mentioned by the speakers that it's one thing to have the policy on the paper, but the reality of the practice can be quite different, which will require a lot of capacity and resources. So I think this is also something that should go planning and goes into the planning. And we've seen that countries which were able to allocate the resources and also synergize the support of different international organizations to have targeted and coordinated support in this regard has also been crucial, and I think it's a good practice that could continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tatevik. So we have now completed the first round of question to all of our panelists. So before going to the second round, I would like to remind our participants one more time to type their questions in the chat box so that we can continue with our Q&A section later. So now I would like to start the second round of question with Adesh sir. So now Nepal has been going through another political transition, and it seems that many of things that has been achieved is also at risk right now. So how do you see that Nepal ensuring continuity of digital inclusion efforts amid these kind of political changes?
Yes, thank you, Nirjana. Again, we have now in the phase where the country is looking at the election as the next big challenge and opportunity, and this is the fact as of today. But I still feel that looking at the context of what happened during the revolution, especially the age group that led the revolution, the digital part of the picture is now even more prominent. So like the demands of good governance, demand of anti-corruptions are now, this can be possible and this can be facilitated better with the digital tools and techniques. Again, that being the question, it's still, I would resonate with what Sriganesh said on the learning by doing and iterating responsibly. We cannot, have this capability as of in instant. So even there is a big demand, we have to look at what the resource we have. Again, very rightly put by the Tatevik that resource management in the ground is quite different than what can be written in the policy. So at this point, we would be looking at what the resources are, what are the quick wins are, and what are the strategic intervention that has to be done. Coming back to the digital Nepal framework and all the policy part, there are a few parts I would like to mention here. One is we are trying to get in the DPI-based structuring of DPI-based transformation of the services. We are trying to have the capability that AI would bring as an key factor in the service delivery. We will be looking at the policy first approach where changes are more based on evidence and based on the policy itself. We were planning to have a council. I think now we have to have even bigger stakeholder engagement within that council. So all the public sector, the academia, the private sector, the new revolutionaries, everybody has their say in how do we move forward as a country, as a service provider, so that the main agenda of good governance, of anti-corruption is being served within, again, the quick wins and within the strategic part. I would like to close with that the multi-stakeholder engagement rightly pointed by all of our speaker before me is now even more prominent and more critical at this juncture of time for the government, so that we um, save or we continue what have been already achieved, and then put it into forward with the resource that we have, or we can gather and make sure that the elections are held, and at the same time there are some reforms within the public service delivery visible to the public. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So once again, coming to Sriganesh, can you tell us about some of the UNDP's initiatives that can be guiding for Nepal to build resilient and people-centered digital ecosystems?
Uh, Thank you. Sorry, 1 second. Oh, yeah, I am. Yeah, thank you. What we are seeing across Asia Pacific is that, I think just to sort of um, reinforce some of the sort of things that I was saying earlier, right, is that digital transformation is no longer just about technology deployment. I think that's a sort of thing that we need to move away from, and we are seeing that, right? And it's really about building that capability, that institutional muscle, so to speak, and the stewardship ability inside the governments and institutions that we need if you're going to be talking about resilience and people-centered digital ecosystem, right? The countries that are getting it right are those who are treating digital transformation as a continuous process, right? Of learning, adaptation, design, right? Not a one-time reform that you do and back, right? It's a continuous process. So to just give you some examples, right, and I would like to sort of bring one from Timor-Leste, a new country, right, relatively new compared to only sort of, maybe 20 years, right, and it's in a sort of some might say a fragile and emerging digital ecosystem, right, and they're starting small, and when they started to, some things that we are helping them with, which is sort of, integrating services, especially things around, birth registration, etc., right? And when we started to do the human-centered design aspects with them, they really started to see what the effect of, the lived experience of people are. To give you that example, right, one of the things that was thought about for them was that, they wanted to increase the number of birth registration, which is, sort of still lagging in terms of, about 70%, 60 to 70%. And one of the thoughts was that we will mandate the use of birth registration to get certain kinds of services. And when we did the service blueprint, we discovered that, for people, their lived experience was really around the use of their baptism certificate. It's a majority Catholic country, right? And nearly everyone has a baptism certificate, which is used for school registration, for getting sort of health services. So if you had gone with that predefined policy that they were thinking of, which is to mandate it, you might actually put the citizens in more difficulty than actually making birth registration a more inclusive process. So now through this work, what they're sort of rethinking, how do you actually bring these informal mechanisms that people use, which work for people, into the sort of formal process in terms of how birth registrations happen, right? So this for me is an example of not thinking what the problems are, but really actually doing that legwork on the ground to understand the lived experiences of citizens, to then sort of say, okay, these are the kinds of changes that we need to bring about in our digital public service delivery, right? The other example that I want to mention is from Sri Lanka, which is where, the work on AI governance, right, and AI strategy, right? AI is on everyone's mind. Everyone wants to have an answer to sort of how their respective countries need to go on this journey. And in Sri Lanka's context, rather than exporting anything sort of global, right, the country has went the path of trying to co-create its strategy, right, that brought together not just ministry, academia, and civil society, and the idea being there that you're also then starting to create a generation of practitioners who understand not only what AI policy is, but also how to govern responsibly in a sort of a co-evolving manner. This is sort of work in progress. The third example that I want to bring in here is actually a little bit more forward looking for us, right? Some of the things that we are starting to do in the region is really around the concept, that the word that I mentioned at the beginning of my response, stewardship, right? How do we build stewards, right, through in terms of digital transformation, right, and specifically inclusive digital transformation? And what we are doing here and what we are trying to support here is basically government officials in several countries who are either working on DPI or AI through a program where, basically it's sort of a long-term process where you have continued engagement for about 12 to 18 months, right? Where they start to co-create particular DPI experiments that they may be thinking of doing, whether it's in a particular sector or whether for DPI or AI. We provide guidance, we provide some support for that process. They start to build their support networks within. They start to understand how adoption should really work in practice, right? It's a sort of a experiment geared towards learning and adaptation, whether it's in DPI or whether it's sandboxes for AI. And at the end of that process, what they will have is a complete understanding of how adoption would look like, what you need to succeed at scale, and what are the sort of partners and stakeholders that you need to bring on this journey, and where they are able to write a bankable, scalable project that could potentially be funded not just by the government, but also by the sort of MDBs. So these are the kinds of, I think the advantage for us sometimes is that being on the ground in so many of these countries, we are starting to learn the sort of emergent sort of, on the ground problems that we see, and we're trying to leverage them to help governments work together in trying to solve these things. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sriganesh. Now I would like to come to Ashit from Huawei. So how does Huawei ensure that its innovation like connectivity and cloud services align with local digital skills and ecosystems to ensure long-term impact?
Okay, so this inclusivity and rights are really the heart of how Huawei approaches innovations. So our philosophy is very simple, like tech for all. So that's the main philosophy that we are driven by. So whether it's like 5G, cloud, or AI, our goal is simple: to make technology accessible, affordable, and secure for everyone. So in connectivity, for instance, our solution help reduce cost and energy use, connecting remote villages without compromising the quality. So talking about on the cloud side, like we follow privacy by design and data sovereignty principles, and we are working closely with government and regulatories to ensure that technology supports human rights and national priorities. And also, like, Huawei aligns its innovation with international frameworks like those given by UNESCO, UNDP, and those to ensure our technology are right-based, open, accessible, and multi-stakeholders in nature. So our goal is not only to connect people, but to connect them safely and equitably and sustainably. And in this, I also want to emphasize that the digital inclusion is not something that any one actor can achieve alone. So this requires, cooperation between government, private sector, international societies, and civil societies. So now adding on to what our past speaker, our Joint Secretary Adesh just said, like Huawei is proud to be a part of multi-stakeholders ecosystem. So sharing technical expertise, investing in local innovations, and supporting the national vision of our digital Nepal. So like ultimately inclusion isn't just about access, it's about trust. So we are committed to open collaboration, responsible innovations, and ensuring that technology strengthens societies rather than dividing them. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashit. So now I would like to come to Waqas regarding the role of civil society in advocating for the inclusive digital policies. So how can civil society coalitions enhance accountability and push for people-centered governance across the region?
Thank you. I think for civil society organizations, it has been, of course, a tough journey. Uh, Speaking with the governments and trying to advocate for equal rights and for inclusive policies. Uh, I think the traditional way of doing things, doing advocacy, needs to be updated on the civil society side as well. It has to be evidence-based advocacy. You have to have an impact-oriented advocacy that talks to the government in terms of assessments and outcomes. Uh, from my own experience in the government for about 10 to 15 years. I know that governments understand numbers and numbers attract governments. What is the impact? How many people would be, impacted by it? What kind of investment can we bring in with this? So that's the kind of evidence-based advocacy that civil society already does, but maybe I think we need to scale it up a bit. The other thing I would say is just to have a collective voice. Forums like APrIGF, these forums itself are a means, a channel of communication with the governments and within the civil society and within the stakeholders themselves. And I think when we come out with a position, that is something which also speaks to the governments and also speaks to the other stakeholders when there is more than one voice, and that is also the same. That is also the case with sort of an offline advocacy as well. When people unite, they come out in numbers. Governments listen. I think that's the same thing that the civil society organizations have to do. Last thing is we have to participate in those inclusive policy development processes, which the governments are now learning to adopt to. So when there is a opportunity, when there is a government which is opening up, which is inviting dialogue, which is inviting comments, take consultations, we should definitely take opportunity of that, and as to build that kind of a trusted channel of communication with the government, where the government also feels that civil society wants to have a positive participation in the policy development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Waqas, for your insights. Now, I would like to come to Tatevik. So, there are several countries where the assessment of UNESCO's Rome X that has been applied, and there are some countries which have adopted the recommendations of such framework. There are the inclusive digital policy making being followed by some countries. Which are emerging as the good practices globally. So, keeping that in view, what do you think could be the practical lessons or policy takeaways that Asia Pacific nations like Nepal can apply to ensure that digital inclusion frameworks are not just diagnostic but actionable and sustainable?
Thank you very much, Nirjana. We have many lessons learned, but just to highlight a few, I think, and also something which again has been highlighted a lot. I think what we've seen was that worked really well is actually institutionalizing in some way this multi-stakeholder advisory board that we support to conduct and validate the assessment. So the practice has shown that once institutionalized, this board has then followed up on the implementation of the recommendations, exactly ensuring that the recommendations did not remain on paper. So this is a very good practice that I think could be considered and adopted by other countries. Investing, I spoke about the resources a little bit and capacities, but one thing I would like to repeat is really to plan sufficiently resources to execute these recommendations and in an inclusive manner, and build the capacity of the concerned stakeholders to be able to ensure the execution of the inclusive recommendations. I think in a short, so for example, what we did in Fiji, for example, which I think was a really good practice, is through the same project that we did jointly with other 5 other UN agencies, was the launch also of their national digital strategy. And what happened is we had this capacity building workshop where this multi-stakeholder representatives matched the policy recommendations in ROMEX assessment with the national newly launched national digital strategy. So this is also something which could be very helpful, looking and matching and ensuring that, again, the recommendations and the valuable data that is gathered does not remain in the report. And what would also be very important, would work really well in many countries. And Nirjana, I know that the report in Nepal hasn't been launched, but already based on the recommendations in many countries, including in the Asia Pacific, the countries or the other organizations beyond UNESCO, because the recommendations cover areas beyond UNESCO mandate, as it aims to give a holistic approach. Many countries then prepared these interventions together with various stakeholders to then ensure again that that the idea of inclusive digital policies are coming to action. And again, I must highlight that the process is as important as just doing diagnostics and doing reporting. So I think this is something we've seen work as a successful model, and I think other countries who haven't yet conducted this assessment could benefit a lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tatevik, and panelists. We have completed the second round of the discussion as well. Now we have 9 minutes, so I think we can take some questions from the floor. I can see one question on the chat box. So I would like to request my colleague Aruna to facilitate with the questions from the chat box.
Okay, so we have one question. I think this could be for UNDP or for Ashit. So how can regional cooperation models better balance government leadership with meaningful participation from civil society and the private sector in shaping digital governance frameworks? So I think Adesh sir or Sriganesh or Ashit can answer the question. Yeah, maybe Adesh sir.
Thank you. Again, just to from the government perspective or from the perspective of service designer, I think we are trying to solve the similar problem across the region. Any services like the example given by Sriganesh in the birth certificate or service design are generally similar within the different government sites. So definitely a good test case or good practice at some place would help save time and effort at other place. That is one part. Second would be standards and data, the frameworks. I think those are the important part. Third would be on the capacity building. I think these two would help have a better framework from the regional perspective. I think Sriganesh can elaborate further.
Ultimately, you could talk about, global frameworks, regional framework, but really what will change the life of citizens is what is happening locally, right? Of course, you can have a philosophical discussions about the sort of cross-border things that our lives are depending on, especially in this sort of data-fied world that we are going into, right? So the question was really about how do you sort of, have maybe I won't answer the question exactly, but I'll sort of give some perspectives here that I think are relevant, right? There's a lot to be learned from what is going on in other countries, of similar countries, similar experience, etc. Right? Ultimately, a lot of this work will be done by practitioners, and it's about people, it's not about systems. So you need to give them a safe place to talk to, right? About things that work, things that did not work, why, right? What can we learn, right? When we have these sort of public forums to discuss these, that doesn't happen because it's not exactly a safe space to learn, right? Safe space to learn means we are humans, we make mistakes, and we need to sort of learn from that. So there's that soft part of regional cooperation that we need to evolve, because then we are starting to learn from experience, not the larger frameworks, which we'll say that is needed, but how do we sort of implement, and what are the things that go wrong? The second part of this, there's that part about how does civil society come into some of these cross-border frameworks, right? I think forums like this are part of that process, right? Because it's bringing in different perspectives for us to sort of take to what the regional frameworks could look like. So I think I would not discount that these kind of forums, the IGFs, etc., are very important forums for bringing these different perspectives together, not from just a country perspective, but where we are talking whether it's regional or whether it's global. But we have to, as I said, be careful when we talk about global coherence or regional coherence. We have to talk about what's fit for our countries, and that means context matters more than anything else, rather than blind coherence of policies across countries and regions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sriganesh. I think Ashit, if you would like to maybe answer in very short.
Yes, I think most of the things are already there. So mostly, I think the key balance is government-led vision and private sector innovations, and civil society inclusion. So all of these things working together to build a resilient and inclusive digital future for our region is like summarizing all the points that we heard, and whatever it is, I think it just summarizes everything.
Thank you, Ashit. So we have one more question. So I think this question is also for Adesh. Maybe Tatevik can answer and Waqas can answer this question. So how are national digital policies ensuring that young people, especially those outside of urban centers, have a voice in shaping the country's digital future beyond being seen only as users of technology? Maybe Tatevik can, and then Adesh sir, and then Waqas can answer this question.
Thank you very much, Aruna. I will allow colleagues to answer in the national context, but what I can tell on behalf of UNESCO that we really, for us, the voices of the youth are really important in any work that we do. And this digital transformation in support that we provide to the countries is not an exception. When I speak about this multi-stakeholder advisory model that we encourage there as well, we encourage very much the engagement of the youth. And as I mentioned, one of the good lessons was the sort of institutionalizing or giving the multi-stakeholder advisory board a more formal status, in a way where youth could also be engaged, not only youth, but also the marginalized groups in rural areas could get engaged and make their voice heard. So this is a model, again, which we would very much encourage and we support.
Thank you, Tatevik. So we have only 3 minutes left, so maybe Waqas and Adesh sir can answer in very short. Please go ahead, Waqas.
Right. So for me first, I think we're pretty sure that youth now knows how to participate in the digital in the future of the government. So we have seen an example. But I think the most important thing is the design of the inclusive policy development processes that the governments follow. Do they actually recognize youth as a stakeholder? I'm sure now they will, not just in Nepal, but across other countries as well. So I think that will open a lot of doors. I just keep it here.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay,
Uh,
I'll just add one point. Again, Waqas has already mentioned it. Only thing is, how do we make it safe and engaging within that ecosystem would be the next question when we have this engagement. Thank you.
Okay, so I think there's one more question to Adesh sir. So we have a lot of questions coming in, but we don't have much time, but I think we'll take just one more. So do national digital policies encourage talented young people with good digital skills to move from school into leadership position in the community, for example, by standing for election to position in the local government?
Hopefully, it should be, because now this is where a lot of policies and the governance are being discussed. So hopefully, it will lead to that direction.
Yes, so I think we are on time. So over to you, Nirjana.
Thank you very much, Aruna, and our panel speakers for taking the questions from the floor. So there are some questions coming up regarding the concerns of the people with disabilities and their participation in the overall digital transformation initiative. Your questions are very well noted. I think we'll find some other ways to reach out to you or reply to your questions later, but we will also have to respect the time. So let me quickly wrap up the session. So I think we have a few takeaways and reflections um, regarding our discussion today. So, inclusivity must be embedded by design, not as an afterthought, but as foundational principle in all digital transformation efforts. Nepal's experience with Digital Nepal framework highlights how national efforts can both benefit from from and contribute to regional cooperation. Public-private partnerships can be powerful vehicles for inclusion when guided by transparency and rights-based principles. Civil society engagement remains essential for ensuring accountability and amplifying the voices of marginalized communities. Frameworks like UNESCO's ROMEX principles and UNDP's principles for digital development offer common ground for countries seeking evidence-based and people-centered digital governance. As we conclude, I would like to thank again Ministry of Communication and Information Technology, Nepal, and APrIGF Secretariat for your cooperation for making this dialogue possible. Thank you to our speakers for your valuable contributions and to all our participants for your active engagement. We look forward to continuing this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.